February 1944. The footsteps echoed down the dark hallway, louder with every second. René Carmille could feel his heart racing, but he didn't run. He couldn't. Not now. Not after everything he'd done. The Gestapo was closing in, but what they didn't know was that they were after more than just a man. They were hunting a secret that could change everything. How did a computer scientist, of all people, become a threat to the Nazis? What exactly was René hiding? And why did it all vanish, as if it never happened? To understand, we have to go back to the beginning, where it all started with a single punch card. The story begins in the 1930s, long before the horrors of war. France was peaceful, and René Carmille was a brilliant but unassuming government official, known for his innovations in data processing. He developed a system that used punch cards, a technology that could process vast amounts of information, tracking populations, organizing national data, and making the government more efficient. But to René, the punch cards were more than just a tool. He saw potential. He knew this system could revolutionize how governments operated. He had a vision of the future, where data could drive progress. But what he didn't know then was that his invention would soon be turned into a weapon, and he'd have to use it not to empower, but to resist. Fast forward to 1940. France falls to the Nazis. The country is occupied, and life changes overnight. The Nazi regime begins their brutal campaign of control, censorship, fear, and most terrifying of all, the systematic deportation of Jews to concentration camps. It wasn't long before the Nazis discovered René's punch card system. They realized its potential too, but for much darker purposes. They wanted to use the cards to track down Jews across France. Every name, every identity, logged and registered. And they needed René to make it happen. But René was no collaborator. He faced a choice: comply with their demands and become complicit in the extermination, or find a way to fight back. René chose resistance, but not with guns or bombs. His weapon was data. He began secretly altering the punch cards, subtly corrupting the system that the Nazis relied on. Names of Jewish citizens were removed, identities erased, whole families were hidden within the data, slipping through the cracks of the Nazi machine. For months, René played a dangerous game. To the outside world, he was just another French official cooperating with the occupation. But behind the scenes, he was saving lives, erasing Jews from deportation lists, hiding them in plain sight within the data. It was risky. One wrong move, and the entire operation would be exposed. But René's system was brilliant, almost undetectable. But even the most meticulous plan has its flaws. The Gestapo started noticing discrepancies. They couldn't quite put their finger on it, but something wasn't adding up. Names weren't matching records. The numbers weren't as clean as they should have been. Suspicion grew. And with each day, the pressure on René mounted. René knew it was only a matter of time before the Gestapo would come knocking. But what he didn't know was how close they were. It started with a routine check. A stack of punch cards flagged by a Nazi officer. Names that seemed to have disappeared from the records. A mistake, they thought, a clerical error. But then, more anomalies emerged. One by one, the missing names began to stand out. The Gestapo was alerted. They didn't know who was responsible, but they knew someone inside the system was manipulating the data. And then one day, René received a call. The Gestapo wanted to meet with him. They had questions. But René, he stayed calm. He had no choice. He couldn't reveal the truth, not without endangering the lives of the thousands he had saved. So he prepared himself for the confrontation. He didn't know it at the time, but this meeting would set off a chain of events that would lead to his downfall. February 1944. René sat in a dimly lit room, the cold eyes of the Gestapo officer staring him down. They had no proof, but they had suspicions. They questioned him for hours about the discrepancies, the missing data, the names that seemed to have vanished. René denied everything, playing the role of a dutiful bureaucrat. But the Gestapo didn't believe him. They were relentless, demanding answers he couldn't give. He held his ground, but he knew the clock was ticking. What he didn't know was that while they were interrogating him, they were also searching through his records. And soon enough, they found what they were looking for: a single punch card, altered just enough to prove his involvement. René was arrested, taken to a Gestapo prison. He knew this was it. They didn't have all the evidence, but they had enough to hold him. The days of playing both sides were over. For weeks, they tortured him, demanding the names of his accomplices, the details of his sabotage. But René refused to talk. Not one word. He was willing to sacrifice himself, but he wouldn't let the thousands of lives he'd saved be destroyed. He knew that if the Nazis discovered the full extent of his sabotage, the entire resistance network could be compromised. So, he stayed silent. René Carmille vanished into the Gestapo's prison system. Officially, he died of exhaustion under interrogation, but no one knows for sure. His legacy was erased, his contributions to the resistance almost entirely forgotten. But what the Nazis never knew was that they never fully uncovered his secret. The punch cards, his system of sabotage, remained largely hidden. The Jews he saved, thousands of them, were left untouched by the Nazi machine. And after the war, René's story was nearly lost to history. He was a pioneer in computing, a quiet hero of the resistance, yet his name faded into obscurity, along with the thousands of lives he had protected in the shadows. Today, René Carmille is recognized by few, but his impact remains monumental. He used technology to resist, to save lives, and to fight back against one of the darkest forces the world has ever known. His punch card system, initially designed for progress, became a tool of defiance. It's a reminder that in times of great darkness, even the smallest acts of resistance can make a difference. And sometimes, the most powerful weapons aren't guns or bombs, but data, ideas, and the courage to do what's right. René Carmille's story is one of silent bravery, a tale of a man who risked everything to save lives. His legacy should never be forgotten. He was a pioneer, a hero, and proof that even in the darkest moments of history, there is always a way to resist. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share René's story with others. His legacy deserves to be remembered and passed down.